Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 93. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in this Wednesday. Yes, we're doing the regular season schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week for the Terrible Podcast, and it's a good thing we did because there's so much to talk about, Dave. Of course, leading off here with The Bachelor and Colton and Cassie getting together. That's the biggest news of the day, right, Dave?
I don't know what you just said.
that makes us even for all the times I don't understand.
I don't know. I know there's something going on with USC and Full House and all like that too. So yeah, but that's about as in depth of analysis as you can get from me on anything outside of football. Oh, by the way, and happy almost football New Year to you.
Happy New Year, football-wise, as well. All right, Dave, seriously, let's get to the biggest news, because there is so much to talk about. This will probably be a 6-hour podcast.
And let me interrupt my specialty right off the bat here. I threw it out there on Twitter last night, or I think this morning. I got to excuse me. I had another 90-minute nap, obviously up late last night with the news, and then watch a film early this morning and all like that. But I reached out on Twitter and said, what one topic do people want us to open the show with today? And I thought I was going to get a landslide, but boy, the replies that came in were all over the map. So we apologize if we don't go open the show with whatever direction you thought we should, but there was no really majority there. So I have a feeling we're going to open up talking about one Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, let's talk about Le'Veon Bell then. He signs with the New York Jets. The saga in Pittsburgh is finally closed the way that it's basically closed with Antonio Brown. And, I mean, I'll let you speak to the numbers because that's obviously the thing that people are looking at. We all knew that he wasn't going to remain a Pittsburgh Steeler. It was a question of where he was going to go and how much money he was going to make and how that compares to what the Steelers offered. So, Dave, did Le'Veon Bell come out on top here, or did that gamble not pay off?
Well, we're going to have to talk about that gamble part of it, but from a financial standpoint, and you and I can play good cop, bad cop with the gamble aspect of it here. But as Adam Schefter first reported last night, 4-year, $52.5 million contract with a max value of $61 million and includes $35 million guaranteed. Now, hold on just a minute there. Always, and I think people know this when we talk about it on the podcast and when I write about it, these initial contract numbers are all nice and fluffy right now with this guaranteed. I don't know if I haven't seen it this morning. I don't think you have either, and I don't think it's out there yet. We don't have the full breakdown of this contract yet as far as what is guaranteed. $35 million guaranteed could include some injury/skill guarantees. We also don't know the first year take on Le'Veon Bell and what the cash flow is. I have a good idea, obviously, of what it is through my experience of covering contracts and the cap and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is if you look at his base of $52.5 million, which I assume that's going to be the base of the deal, it averages just over $13 million per season. So on an average yearly value scale, that's not 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to take my shoes off to get that math done there. On top of that, I would think, I'm going to speculate that his 2019 money, which will be base salary and whatever signing bonus or roster bonus he gets, is going to be around, I don't know, $20 to $22 million sounds about right here. So in other words, let's say his take home is on the high end in 2019 of $22 million. Well, he obviously chose to sat out last season there and forego the $14 million tag that was placed on him. So 0 earnings last year. He turned down a deal from the Steelers that reportedly would have paid him roughly around $33 million in the first 2 years through 2019 there. So if you just look at it from those from the hard number standpoint, and assuming, and that's, once again, that's dangerous to do, but let's assume he got $22 million. What's 33 minus 22?
11.
All right, so probably at best he's $11 million behind right now, and he's probably never going to make that up either, the way these contracts go, because the cash flow will start clicking down the APY and all like that. So we'll see what the final numbers say on that. But I mean, can you really imagine Le'Veon Bell getting, let's say, $30 million in 2019? I mean, that's over half the contract right there, and it just sounds outrageous if that were the case, and it would to me, at least. We'll see. I mean, I can't imagine the $35 million guaranteed is quote unquote fully guaranteed. We'll see, but if it is, then obviously at least he's fully guaranteed that. So I guess the question is now, is giving up, let's say he gave up $11 million and he's behind $11 million. Is $11 million worth it to save some wear and tear on your body for a season to collect? Let's assume that he did get $35 million fully guaranteed. Is that gamble worth it?
Yeah, that's the biggest question. I'm sure his side will argue that it is, and that you get the benefit of, maybe not coming out ahead money-wise, but being relatively close, and the benefit of maybe a second payday or not having that wear and tear. But yeah, I think bottom line for me is that Bell's market was softer than what he anticipated, but he's still getting a ton of money, and you could still argue, at least from his camp, that it was the right decision. I mean, you can disagree with that as well, but I don't think it's an awful situation for him, clearly.
Yeah, we're mocking a guy, we're mocking a guy that's going to put $35 million in his bank account probably over the next couple of years here. So hard to mock a guy that does that. But and look, the other aspect of it as well is, you're leaving an organization for the Steelers, that prides itself in paying out almost 90% of all contracts, big contracts such as what they offered him last year. He had a chance and was on pace to have a nice legacy, if you will, in Pittsburgh. Obviously on top of that, he was, he had a nice start of his career going. I don't want to throw Hall of Fame out there, but I mean, he was putting up some nice numbers there, and an offensive line that's staying intact, played for a quarterback that's been around the block a few times, and he's trading all that in to go to a big market city such as New York and play for a very inexperienced young quarterback in Sam Darnold. And we'll see how that offensive line is there, but I don't know. I mean, their wide receivers. What do you think about their wide receivers over there? You want to talk about him being paid to play running back or wide receiver? He's probably gonna have to catch a lot of balls over there as well too, and probably gonna have to play a lot of snaps on top of it there. So you got to factor in, that aspect of it as well. So look, we wish him the best. It looks like that's going to bring hopefully a third round compensatory draft pick value along with it on the Steelers side. Is it okay to say that both the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell lost here?
Well, again, from Bell's perspective, I'm sure he'll argue that he didn't lose because, one, I guess there's a principal argument to the tag that he could argue with, and two, the way the contract set up with the max value, I guess you could argue that, he still got what he wanted. I mean, I think, again, objectively, or at least in my opinion, the market was softer than what he anticipated. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could say, obviously, the Steelers are losing something with Bell. Now we're showing that they can replace him, and it's easier to replace Bell than it is going to be to replace Antonio Brown. And that, yeah, Bell didn't get the $15 million year, definite resounding yes to that deal that he wanted. So yeah, I guess it's fair to say they both lost.
And I guess I think the great Melanie Friedlander at Girl Surgeon on Twitter pointed out that the taxes in New York going to factor into this as well. And how he thought the Pittsburgh media was hard on him at times. Wait until he gets a hold of that New York media. Watching and scrutinizing every move that he makes both on and off the field there. So, that's something else to remember. Now, in a big market in New York, as far as maybe some endorsements go, maybe he can make up, what he's behind contractually with some endorsements or whatnot.
Yeah, Bell's bank account's going to be fine. That's all I know. He's still got a ton of money. But it'll be interesting to see how he and AB adjust to an offense with, quarterbacks that aren't as talented as the ones they've played with, offensive lines that aren't as talented as the ones they've played with. So that'll be the interesting dynamic, is how their production and how their happiness works in teams that are objectively probably not as good as Pittsburgh is right now.
True or false? After the next 2 seasons, Le'Veon Bell will still be a member of the New York Jets.
Yeah, I'll say true. Even if with some of that wear and tear and the age getting up there, closing in on 30, with all the value he brings as a receiver, I think he'll play for the bulk of that contract.
I'm going to say false.
Really?
Yeah.
What's their idea?
I have a feeling when we see this contract that the Jets are going to be able to kind of cut some of the losses there after the second year. But
would they want to? I mean, I'm sure they will have the ability with the way teams are smart and structure the contract.
You know what I worry about with him? I worry about that running style of his, that patient running style. I worry about the big.
What worries you about the running style?
Just look at me. He's not a big play running back. He's not a 20. He's not an explosive play running back. And I think you could see it take some time for him, for that running style of his to kind of find its place there. So that might be a detriment. Also, man, running backs taking a year off. This will be an interesting case study, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it looks, I don't believe the reports that he was ever 260 or that he's terribly out of shape. He's not out of shape now, I'll tell you that much. The videos he's posted on Instagram and Snapchat, the dude looks like, regular Le'Veon Bell.
And yeah, I'm not factoring that in either. Sure. I'm just talking about just the not being out there,
right.
That kind of thing there. So, it's really just a shot in the dark on my side, but, when you look at the longevity of running backs and all, and when you look at the Jets organization as far as faithfulness goes, with some of the last big signing, I understand under a different general manager and all like that, I think I'd be willing to, if you gave me some good enough odds, to put a couple of units on Bell playing 2 years and being done in New York.
All right, fair enough.
Somebody write that down for the 2021 season of the Terrible Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said earlier, you wish Le'Veon Bell the best of luck. Great player in Pittsburgh, dynamic back. Just that do-it-all 90% snap count guy that's just so rare to see. And as frustrating as he may have been for Steeler fans, he wanted to make decisions that were best for him, and I don't have really any ill will against him, and hope he has a ton of success with the Jets.
And the Jets will play the Steelers this year.
Do they? Okay, I was going to ask you that. I couldn't remember the schedule off the top of my head. Is that in Pittsburgh or away game?
I don't quite remember. If you vamp a little bit, I can figure it out.
So you got AB and Bell rematch in 2018 or 2019, excuse me. So that'll be.
Let's see. They play. They don't play the Raiders.
They don't play the Raiders?
No.
Oh, that was Buffalo I was thinking of whenever the Buffalo deal fell through.
They play the Jets away.
Jets away. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I hope that'll be a fun one for sure. All right, Dave, where do you want to jump to next? I was going to go Steven Nelson, but is there anything else you wanted to hit before we got to the Steelers' big splashy signing?
I think, I don't think we have. Is there anything that we have to talk about as far as the Antonio Brown stuff goes? I think we can push the pause button on that, right?
Yeah, I'd rather not. I know you had the post yesterday about the tampering and Brown being at the Raiders facility before the trade is official because it can't happen to the new league year opens, but I really don't care. I mean, it may be a violation, but really, who cares?
Yeah, I found it unique to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to Joel Corey on that, and he says unless they had permission, you just worry about, what if the Steelers wanted to back out of that trade for whatever reason, and when what if Brown got hurt or what have you. But anyway, let's push the pause button on the Antonio Brown talk for at least an episode here. All right, Steven Nelson. We when we were going down through that list of cornerbacks, I think we mentioned his name or time or two in some previous episodes. Obviously behind Bradley Roby, right? And the Steelers did indeed reach out and had conversations with Bradley Roby and apparently wanted to try to sign him to a 3-year deal. Bradley Roby instead decided to sign a 1-year deal with the
Houston Texans.
With the Houston Texans for what was it, $10 million?
Yep, $10 million.
And that's kind of understandable. He's going to, why I guess Houston's the place to go get your prove it year in. We saw Tyrann Mathieu do that last offseason, and now Bradley Roby will do that as well too. Look, people say, well, why couldn't the Steelers do that? How many times have we talked on this podcast that the Steelers don't like to do those 1-year contracts with they're not unless you're willing to sign a minimum salary benefit deal, they're not the place to come do prove it deals. If they invest in you that kind of money, they want to lock you up for a couple of seasons. So that's why the Steelers did not sign Bradley Roby there. Now, what did the Steelers offer Roby? Probably close to what he got, average yearly value. I would probably guess around 9.5, maybe even to 10. But Roby obviously thinks that one season with the Texans, he can increase his value and then take a bigger bite of the apple a year from now there. So it is, look, at least they made the effort there, and for whatever that's worth. And after doing so, they wasted no time with probably going with the second guy on their list, and that's Steven Nelson, a guy that I'm sure you remember me talking about him ahead of the 2015 draft. And according to the early reports here, Nelson agreed to terms on a 3-year, $25.5 million deal with the Steelers. I would bet that he's going to get around 12 to 13 million of that in year one this year in signing bonus and base salary there, and then go from there. As far as the Steelers go, we talk about, we even said we would be disappointed if they did not attack the cornerback position with a more expensive guy, I guess, this offseason, and they did that.
Right. Corner was the one position I thought that had the best chance of being targeted because I thought there were the most quality and quantity out there, and it was, to me, the biggest position of need, and a position, as I've said time and time again, and it's obvious, a position that the Steelers have really struggled evaluating and finding the right guy in the draft. So I thought it kind of was that perfect storm, and Roby was my number one guy and appeared to be theirs as well, but you get a kind of your backup plan in Steven Nelson, and I thought this team would be aggressive. I thought they would make at least one splash move. I said that $8 to $10 million range. Maybe that Roby offer was on the high end of the 8 to 10 range, and Nelson was on the low end of it. But regardless, Steven Nelson in Pittsburgh, and for me off the top, I mean, from what I saw, and we'll go into all his game here in a moment, but what he provides that the Steelers defense and the Steelers secondary is lacking is the splash play. And we know that's been the biggest issue for this defense, not only at corner, but across the entire defense. But Nelson is opportunistic, and he can finish the play, and he has good ball skills. 4 picks last year, I think 16 breakups. So to me, just big picture, first thing that sticks out to me about Steven Nelson, there's good, bad, ugly, we'll get to all of that. But the first thing that sticks out to me is that ability to make the big play.
4 interceptions last year, only 4 of his career, I believe. And how many interceptions did the Steelers cornerbacks have collectively last year, Alex?
4. So that one hurt. But that's why Steven Nelson's a Steeler right now.
Probably so. And a little bit of background: the Steelers. Another thing we've talked about, the Kevin Colbert, the Steelers' MO. They like players they know. They like pedigree, top 3-round guy pedigree, draft pedigree guys, guys that they're familiar with from back when they were drafted. The Steelers, I believe, met with Steven Nelson at the Senior Bowl that year, if memory serves me. And they did have him in for a pre-draft visit in 2015 as well. He obviously was drafted in, the 3rd round by the Chiefs in 2015. So, this fits what they do. And, I know people look at that and say, well, wow, 8 point whatever million per season with that. Seems like seems like they should have been able to buy a little bit more than that. Well, you see some of these guys around the league getting paid, and the cap goes up, and so does the price. I mean, a top market corner right now is worth what, 13?
Yeah, worth a good bit of money.
So, I mean, this is a little bit of a bargain, but you get what you pay for here. And going back, this is I don't remember how much you remember me writing and talking about him. I think I had him in a couple of mock drafts of mine back in 2015. I think he is a player that I actually wrote the write-up on, the profile on that year as well, too. A grid, in a kind of a sentence to kind of describe him: gritty, well put together, not overly athletic, opportunistic. I think you brought that up a little bit earlier there when kind of describing him. And I hate to throw out the term William Gayish, but there's some similarities there.
Yeah, if you remember kind of obviously a younger William Gay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, he's a physical guy. That's kind of been one of his calling cards, is that he'll play the run. He can hit. He's got some good hit power. There's want-to and desire as a tackler and in the run game. Thought his run game overall was solid. I think the tackling technique needs some work. I think he gets a little sloppy and kind of gets, he doesn't come in balance and strike through and wrap up as much as you'd like. But he's
a latcher-on.
Yeah, he's a latcher on. He'll kind of throw you down because he's a smaller guy. He's 5'10", listed 199. Yeah, half a dozen of the other. So he's not the biggest guy, but there's definitely a want-to and a desire. I think Tomlin always says you'd rather say whoa than sick him, and he's kind of a whoa type of guy. And that's good and bad because I think probably maybe the biggest issue with Steven Nelson is, like you said, maybe that lack of top-end athleticism. But I think the most obvious criticism of Steven Nelson is an over-aggressiveness and occasional lack of technique that leads to a lot of penalties, and obviously that's something the Steelers defense experienced too much last year.
11 total penalties for Steven Nelson last season. 9 of them were accepted, and they were a defensive pass interference and defensive holding. So there you go, and that's part of his physicality. I mean, he is not afraid. One thing that jumped out to me is, he's not afraid to mix it up with the bigger wide receivers, but he does tend to bounce off of them a little bit, off of press and out in routes when he tries to. He can be knocked off, I guess. But I think, and it was a negative play for him. If you go back and watch the AFC Championship game against the Patriots, that long touchdown to. Who was the touchdown down the left side in that game? I'm drawing a blank.
Hogan?
No, the other. No.
Edelman?
No, not Gronk.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Not Gordon. Anyway, he likes to bite on. He likes to bite on that out and up. He did that, but I think the one thing that caught my eye on that play, and I even had it in my notes in my notebook from the AFC Championship game, is he got himself back in phase, so you got to give him that. He probably could have been called for pass interference on the end zone on that play, but I mean he was able to get back there and make some sort of contest on it.
Yeah, I think
that's what stuck out.
Well. I think he recovers really well. I think when he does get beat, he's got good technique and he's got good ball skills in terms of being able to play the pocket, play the catch point of the receiver, go up against bigger, more physical receivers, and he's got that competitive, feisty kind of attitude that you appreciate and you kind of look for, and it's the hallmark of a Steelers corner historically. So, yeah, again, he's got to clean stuff up. I think he gets too aggressive at the top of the route, and because he's a smaller guy, he can get bumped off and give up space. Sometimes I want to see him, not have to look back for the ball when he's out of phase, make sure we're on the receiver, we're staying in phase, and we're playing the ball that way. But yeah, I mean, you're going to get some high plays from him, some big plays from him. You're also going to give up some big plays from him. And that was similar to Bradley Roby. I liked Roby better because I thought he was a twitchier, more athletic guy with probably a little better versatility. But Nelson is cut from a similar cloth, so it's not surprising to see the team go to Nelson as kind of their backup choice because he's a guy that will create the big play, but also give up a couple on his own too.
Right, and I think we should point out right side. If you're looking at the back of the defense, he's a right. He played a lot of the right cornerback there. I think just a handful. I don't know what 20, 30 snaps maybe in the slot. I mean, that wasn't his deal last year in that Bob Sutton defense. He was targeted, probably the most targeted cornerback in the NFL last season. So obviously he gave up a lot of catches because of that. But I think if you look at his overall, completion percentage against and we'll be doing route breakdowns, and we've just barely even scratched the surface on the tape, at least me. Now, I will say on the, 15, 16 pass breakups, Alex, I think 4 of them I went through. Isn't this the beauty about living in a world with NFL Game Pass right now is you can just pull these all 22 up on really, right in succession and roll through them so quickly on that. And I think the thing that jumped out on me about his pass breakups were like 4 of the balls were not greatly thrown balls, right? But you would expect your cornerback to contest those balls that are a little bit behind the wide receiver that are not on target there, and he did that. I think you're going to see in his tape a lot of off that he'll be charged with giving up receptions on. A lot of instances, or at least I shouldn't say a lot from the tape that I looked at. Some out routes, playing off and giving out those 7-yard outs in certain situations there. But he was asked, at least what I saw, to play quite a bit of man. Some bail in there, and then obviously the standards. You'll see them back off, and they drop into some cover 3, and you'll see them probably later in games. At least that's what I picked up on it. Playing some underneath on some cover 2.
Yeah, I thought he's primarily a press man corner with some bail technique, and bail technique is just kind of the appearance of press man pre-snap, and then right before the snap of the football, you're going to bail and back off and turn your hips to the middle of the field, and you're going to help read the route of the receiver and the quarterback's eyes. But yeah, the Chiefs ran a ton of stuff with Bob Sutton. They ran zone schemes. They ran a lot of blitz packages, and they ran a lot of man. So I think he's well versed in any sort of scheme. But given how heavy the Steelers turned to man coverage last year, 3rd most in the NFL, I think they have a corner that's capable and has played in a lot of man situations and is comfortable being out there on an island. So I think that's another attractive part of Steven Nelson. He just makes the plays his secondary doesn't, and they're not necessarily the highest level plays in the world. I'm not going to pretend like he's making these 10 out of 10 difficulty interceptions or breakups, but there's some impressive plays out there, and you just didn't get it from really anybody in the Steelers secondary last year, and it seemed to get worse as the year went on, especially with guys like Mike Hilton, who started the year off, I thought, really well and faded down the stretch. So he's just making the plays that corners should make, but you didn't have in Pittsburgh, and you had to bring somebody in because you couldn't go in with the same personnel before, because that's the definition of insanity. So, so I thought there was some really good tape, certainly some question marks. I see him as a number 2, not a number 1 lockdown guy. But there is the versatility, too, because although you're right that he played primarily right cornerback in 2018, he really began his career as a slot corner. The bulk of his career prior to 2018, he was an interior kind of guy. So he has that versatility. I wouldn't expect him to move around a ton, but he could if you needed him to.
Yeah, and you don't see too much of him playing on the other side either on the left. At least I haven't there. You will see him running. To the other side of the field with receivers. In that man coverage and all. So that's something that he has experience doing as well too. As far as his tackling goes, 9 missed tackles, I think, last year, and 3 of them. If you want to watch Steven Nelson's worst game from last season, you've probably already seen it, and that was the Week 2 game against the Steelers there. He played actually pretty decent against Antonio Brown in that game, but 2 penalties in that game, 2 of his 11 penalties on the season in that game, and 3 of his 9 missed tackles in that game as well too. So if you put on that game, you're probably watching his worst game of the season.
Is 9 considered a lot? I mean, is that relatively speaking? Can you frame that number for me?
Well, I can frame it in the aspect that he played a whole hell of a lot of snaps.
Yeah, I think 98%, and the Chiefs' defense is probably out there a good bit.
Yeah, so I think from an overall snap standpoint, it's not bad.
Okay. Yeah, and I know people will look at some of the numbers and the targets and some of the yards that he gave up, but man, every offense had to throw in that Chiefs D because those games were shootouts. You couldn't run the football. You couldn't play ball control. The Chiefs didn't let you do it. So I thought metrically the numbers do look good, and some of the volume numbers, and the catches he gave up was just a product of teams having to throw it 50 times on the Chiefs defense to try to get back in games.
I don't think you'll see a lot of yak against him from last season either. Obviously, I haven't gone through all the tape, and just a heads up, I mean, Alex has a fantastic, I mean, I tell you, I'm just so blessed to have, guys like you and Matthew and Daniel and Josh and Nick now and Tom and good Lord, who am I leaving? Mel and just such great. I mean, people just don't understand how busy you, I, and Matthew are right now in the bulk of free agency here, and for you to be able to turn around and put that fantastic post up to break down of Nelson up way less than 12 hours, I think, after it was announced they came to terms with him, is great. But we're not done, and people are going to say, what else is there? And people don't draw any hard conclusions of what we say on this podcast today and what Alex has on his post, because we got a lot more coming at you. I'm going to try to break down every target of his, every pass defense. So just give us a little bit of time as we get into the offseason. Lord knows we have a lot of that coming up there with that. But overall, look, I was a Steven Nelson fan prior to the 2015 draft. After watching what I've seen on tape, I would grade this, when you look at price versus what he is and how he fits, I don't know, B minus.
I was thinking more solid B, if anything, just for that playmaking ability, because that's going to be so refreshing. But yeah, I think somewhere in the B range is fine.
He will stick his face in the fan. It's one of my favorite terms when it comes to him. And, yeah, you're right. More closely measured in at the combine at 5'10 and 1/8, 197 pounds. He's put together nice, I think. 4.49, 40-yard dash. The air conditioning must have been on in Lucas Oil. But, I mean, you look at him sometimes in long speed, especially I remember back to his college tape there were instances of him turning the Jets on there. He made 38 starts and registered 182 tackles to go along with 4 interceptions, as we said, 35 passes defensed, and 1 forced fumble during his career with the Chiefs. Last season was obviously his best season with the Chiefs, as he recorded 68 total tackles, 4 interceptions. I believe 20 of those 68 tackles were run tackles. There, so put that into perspective there. 4 interceptions, of course, 15 defense passes last season, and made 16 consecutive starts there. We already talked about what he did at the Combine, and in his 2 seasons at Oregon State, he intercepted 8 passes, was credited with 16 total pass breakups, and he also registered 122 total tackles. So you're going to when you hear Kevin Colbert finally talk about this guy, you're going to hear him talk about a physical guy, a guy that can make plays on the ball, a smart kid, and a guy that they were familiar with. There you go. There's
the press conference.
There's your Kevin Colbert press conference when he talks about Steven Nelson.
Dave, you are the Kevin Colbert ghostwriter, because that's spot on. I mean, that's exactly what I would say.
Anything else? I mean, anything else that you want to look further into when it comes to him, other than just big picture? I mean, I think we've hit on a lot of what he is and isn't right here.
Yeah, I just want to find some examples of how he'll fit in the Steelers scheme. I want to kind of look at it from that aspect. I didn't get a chance to do it because it was so late last night. I finished the report at like 3 a.m., and I thought we were in a good spot there. Just with the speed, yeah, I don't think the long speed is great. I think it's good. He's not, the fastest guy on the field, but my biggest concern with Nelson vertically is just playing with good technique and staying with it, especially at the top of the route, and not getting too grabby, not trying to bump these guys and pin these guys too much deep downfield, because he is a smaller guy and he will get himself out of position because of it. So if he can play with good technique, I think he can make up for that lack of elite speed. He's not slow, but he's not the fastest guy either.
He's going to have some penalties.
Yeah. I mean, I think hopefully Terrell Lawson can work with him and clean some of that technique stuff up. But when you're also for 4 years in the NFL career and just getting penalized, and that was the issue with Oregon State too. You look at his Oregon State scouting report. I saw that last night. Penalties were an issue back then too. So if it hasn't changed then, it's probably not going to change a whole lot now.
Did I have that in my write-up or no?
I think you did. I was looking at his combine numbers. I pulled up his NFL.com profile and I just scanned through it really quickly. I think I saw it on NFL.com, and I think you had written about it as well.
I don't know where the gifts went in that post of mine from 2000. They vanished somehow, and I can't find them whatsoever. But I had a pretty decent thought write up on him.
What did you have as the biggest? I'm going to look it up. What did you have as the biggest negatives with his report? I wonder if you had the penalties noted.
Lord, I don't. Pull it up here. Yeah, I can't. I just remember how physical he was. I mean, I think he went against who was the was it the Arizona State wide receiver? Who was the Arizona receiver that came out that year?
Oh, you're asking some big questions there.
But I remember him doing fairly well. I remember him being a high effort guy, playing well against the run, very physical guy. Obviously, the turnovers there. What do you read? I don't have my report pulled up on there.
Yeah, no, I just pulled. Yeah. Basically, all the stuff we talked about today is the same stuff we talked about in 2015. I mean, here's the bad from Steven Nelson, and there's good too. We'll get to that as well. But you wrote lack ideal measurables to play outside, not fluid when turning and running, which is a good point too. He's a little bit tight in his hips. Penalized quite a bit for grabbing and clutching. Questions about long speed, willing tackler and run support, but not consistent in that area. Needs to work on tackling form. Change of direction is not great. So the book we have on Nelson today.
How about is the same that? I'm proud of myself there.
You should be. You nailed it.
I am proud of myself there. Okay. Now I think the big question is that people might be asking themselves, and I think I got a question or two on Twitter about it, was, well, what does this mean for the draft, Alex, when it comes to the cornerback position? So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you talk about it first.
Well, I mean, I don't like to rule anything out because cornerback depth is so important, and Joe Hayden's going the last year of his deal, right? I'm going to make you talk real quick.
That is correct, sir.
So, I mean, he could be extended, and that's possible, but also maybe not. So you got to look at a contingency plan going forward. Now, obviously, I think at this point, inside linebacker becomes the number one priority because most of the inside linebackers are off the board. Jordan Hicks goes to Arizona, and Colbert's talked about the need to get that Shazier replacement. They haven't replaced it adequately. We all know that. So, I think obviously if a Devin Bush is there, he's going to be the priority over, say, a cornerback like Byron Murphy or DeAndre Baker or someone like that. But I'm not going to put it into a box quite yet because, there's so many variables that's going to change. But obviously, cornerback takes a step back now that you have a starter and you kind of have with Hayden and Hilton and Sutton, you have enough of a group there that you can kind of turn attention to positions like receiver and inside linebacker.
I don't think we talk about what Kevin Colbert likes to do. He likes to fill in some holes, and he doesn't like to have his hands tied behind his back into forcing them into one particular position. However, when you spend $8+ million per year on a cornerback to play opposite a guy like Joe Hayden, the priority comes down a little bit there, especially when you have a guy like Mike Hilton returning this year. We'll see what's going to happen with Cody Sensabaugh. Obviously, you just pray for the best with Artie Burns. I mean, he's got a foot out the door already. You just hope something can happen, that they can straighten something out with him, and maybe you get a little bit more confident, a little bit more consistent backup out of him if he makes the roster this year. So with that, with Joe Hayden, we'll see what the Steelers' plans are with Joe Hayden are. I don't think we're going to really know what those plans are, though, until later in the offseason. There's no hurry right now to sign Joe Hayden to any kind of extension. Maybe when they get into training camp and depending on what they get in the draft, they'll make the decision there.
Right.
But I'm with you. And look, especially the way this team fails to develop cornerbacks, do you really want one in the first round right now? Would you rather? And I think there's some decent ones that can be had in the third round this year, right? I mean, on your initial kind of look at this group. I mean, you got Amari out of Penn State, maybe be around in the third round. A couple other guys that might be around in the third round as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of mixed on this class. I think there is some talent there. I am worried about the depth, though. I think once you get past the first two rounds, I think it starts to really level off in terms of the talent and the names. Maybe I just haven't explored that group enough because I paid attention to so many guys at the top. But again, as you said and as I said, and that's why I wanted this team to get a corner and address secondary and free agency so badly, was because of the issues they've had with evaluating guys and in a cornerback class that is not great. I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. I thought was all the more reason to be aggressive in free agency. So I think this gives them the flexibility that you say Kevin Colbert desires, and so they're not pigeonholed into making one move, and so they can turn their attention to positions like inside linebacker, where if you want to get a guy at inside linebacker, you got to take him high. You can't wait to the third round for that guy and expect him to come in and be your savior.
Right, exactly. And the thing, too, is if you draft a cornerback in the first round, you're going to want to try to get him on the field as soon as possible, right? And
yeah.
The way it looks right now, that's going to be kind of hard to do if things go as planned.
Yeah, and maybe that was one of the issues in the evaluation. Because this team loves underclassmen and they've tried to address secondary earlier the last couple of years, to try to get a young corner onto the field maybe is not the right plan because it is such a tough position to make the transition to. So I like this approach a little bit better.
Yes, I agree. I still think they draft one, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly possible. And they could draft one early. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out. It all just depends. But, like I said, it takes a step back on the priority list behind, to me, inside linebacker and receiver.
All right, what's next?
Let's get to the other signings, Steelers-wise, and then we'll kind of go to some of the, Foster and Pouncey stuff and then around the league. But Anthony Chickillo returning to Pittsburgh on a 2-year, $8 million deal. I know that number's probably a little higher than what we anticipated, but that is kind of the way the market goes. And evidently, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, had basically the same offer from the Patriots. So Chick choosing Pittsburgh over New England, and he's coming back to be a Steeler.
Yeah, I guess it – look, the number surprised me. I'm not going to lie.
Yep, same.
That number surprised me by an extra $4 million. I'm not going to lie to you. But remember the last couple of shows when we were talking about potential targets at outside linebacker, we were trying to stammer around to find what's out there that looked affordable. To be kind of a backup type player, and really this year's free agent class not great when it comes to that position there. So I'm going to explain what I think their thinking is with this. Not that I agree with it here, but the Steelers love to re-sign their own for starters. B, he's a good special teams player. Where else do I want to go with this now? I mean,
trying to parse the logic.
I guess because there was some competition in there, maybe from the Patriots to help drive that price up some there. It's hard. It really is hard to explain other than what I just said of why And look, I mean, the market has gone up. Salary cap goes up, so the prices go up as well too. So I don't think he's a $4 million a season player, but
Yeah.
he does give you some experience there, and it would make more sense if they turned around and cut Bud Dupree, but
you get about 3 hours to do that.
But I'm not convinced that's going to happen there. So we'll see. I think at this point, though, I would be surprised if they signed another experienced, backup edge rusher at this point here. So yeah, I mean, I understand the instant reaction to it, but I mean, his cap hit shouldn't be bad in the first year, and he should be cuttable next year if you need to, and hopefully you don't have to see him play a lot in 2019, and hopefully when he plays on special teams, he's a demon.
A lack of options here, I think, really puts this team in a tough spot with Bud Dupree and Chicolo's contract situations. Because I think objectively you're paying too much for the production or lack of production they've had at outside linebacker. But as we've seen this edge market really be hot this year, and some of the contracts the guys like Zadarius Smith and others have gotten. Obviously, Chick's not much of a pass rusher, but he has played a little bit, and that's that market's hot, and it's going to drive everybody's price up. So Chick went from a $2.5 million per year kind of guy to a $4 million a year kind of guy. I can buy that, and I think because of the lack of options, as you said, the free agent market is not great, and again, it is really hot right now, and a lack of in-house replacements. I mean, I know everyone's higher on Ola Adeniyi, and I was impressed by him too, and I'm excited about him, and I want to see him become the number 3 top backup rotational guy in that Chick role in 2019. He's got 9 NFL snaps, and from a team perspective, that's scary because you don't know what you have because you just haven't played him, and that kind of compels you to keep Chick, and that compels you to match the offer and drive his price up.
We don't. As much as we'd like to think that we don't know anything about Keon Adams and Adeniyi.
Yeah, Adams is even just on the way back burner. He's whatever you can get from him. I mean, the guy hasn't made a roster yet, and he hasn't taken an NFL snap. I mean, we were kind of speculating some things about Matthew Thomas. Undrafted free agents, man, it's a tough road. And yeah, I mean, Adeniyi showed us some nice stuff during last year's preseason and all. And obviously, you saw some things during training camp that you liked as well too. But we're not going to learn. We're not going to know who Adeniyi is until. And this assumes he makes the roster, obviously, until about 9 games into the season. So now. It doesn't. I think one thing you got to keep in mind too is Chick did make almost $2 million last year on a restricted tender. So you're not going to make him go backwards. So his value was probably at least to you $2 million a season. You just told him it was $2 million a season last year. Right.
So you double it. You more than double it this year. I mean, yeah, it does seem a little high. I kind of understand why they did it. I'm not a big fan of it, just the same because of the price. But we'll get over the price tag of it as long as he contributes as a good special teamer and only has to play 15% of the snaps.
Yeah, he's a core guy. He's played more special team snaps the last 3 years than any other player on the Steelers roster. He's a four-phase guy, and he's versatile as an outside linebacker. He can play either spot, and you trust him. I mean, yes, obviously as a pass rusher, he's very limited, but the coaches do trust him, and there's value in that.
All right, Dan. Assuming they don't add another outside linebacker free agent, this is a position you probably want to think about in the first couple of 3 rounds here, right?
Yeah, if you can get it, with Dupree, going the last year of his rookie deal, and Chick no sure thing, and again the question marks around Adeniyi, I'm not opposed to adding an edge rusher somewhere in the starting 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Do you think this is something they address in the first round, though?
Again, I'm not going to rule it out. Depends on the board. I mean, the names that are there versus the names in other positions. I don't think it's going to be the goal necessarily. It's not going to be a higher priority than inside linebacker or receiver. But if the board falls the right way, it's possible. It's just tough because you want to get that guy on the field, and you're paying Bud that money, and Watt's obviously not coming off, and so at best that number one pick is going to be a rotational guy.
All right. What else do we have?
Let's finish up the Steelers stuff. The numbers came in for Foster and Pouncey. Dave, you can talk about that. I thought good deals for both sides of them.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we already talked about the total value of of the Ramon Foster deal, and the contract numbers are in. And really, he didn't take home as much in year one as I thought maybe he could have there. So he 2-year contract totaled out at $8.25 million. $3.15 million signing bonus is very, very affordable there. First year base salary, $1.1 million. Cap charge for 2019, $2.675 million. So when you subtract roster displacement, a little bit more than a little bit more than $2 million, it ate up in salary cap space. And for a guy like Ramon Foster, you're taking that every day, and he never even, he talked about familiarity and all like that, and he thought really it was the Steelers stepped up to the plate, if you will, on the deal there. So, look, if he falls off the cliff in 2019, you can get out of this, fairly cheap here. And as far as the Marquise Pouncey deal went, his cap number did not move. So that's the big, I think, one of the aspects about it. He was the league's highest paid center for a couple of days there, so at least hopefully he doesn't grow a blonde mustache anytime soon there. Sign. But obviously 2-year extension signed through 2021 season. The numbers look fine and as expected when it comes to Pouncey's deal there. Once again, we don't have the full contract breakdown on Chickalo or Nelson yet. Like I said, Nelson, I would expect $12 million to be earned, 12 to 13 maybe to be earned in 2019. Cap hit probably around $5.5 million right around in there for Steven Nelson in 2019. Chickalo, that contract's probably going to be split up probably kind of evenly the way Ramon Foster's is as well. So hopefully maybe by Monday we'll have the numbers on those.
Real quick, Dave, not to talk about AB too much, but did you see him go back to his regular mustache? He's no blonde mustache anymore.
Yes, I did.
I feel like that was a ploy to make himself look ridiculous as a Steeler. To try, I don't know. I feel like it's something he would do just to make himself look silly, so Pittsburgh would just get fed up and deal him.
Well, Rosenhaus had that interview with Rich Eisen that Matthew Marksy wrote about the other day, and if listeners haven't read that yet. Kind of some more confessions in there from Rosenhaus, basically telling the Raiders that if they didn't want to inherit any issues that other teams have, then Antonio Brown's going to need a contract.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Anyway, I just saw that and it made me laugh because that's just not my conspiracy theory. All right, Dave. I know this is probably a tough question for you to answer, but I'm sure that's probably half of your mentions on Twitter right now. Steelers cap space. What are they looking at here? I know there's still moves to be made, Burnett, Ben, but what shape are the Steelers in right now?
Yeah, and I was working on this again last night. I guess it's a good time to interject in there that, as expected, I took a lot of flack for this earlier in the offseason, sticking to my guns that Ryan Shazier and his contract would toll. The Steelers did confirm yesterday that his contract will toll. So there you go, and that's he'll be placed on reserve PUP in a not too distant future, just as he was a year ago, and probably on a split salary again like he was. He'll be able to get all the insurance and benefits and all to help with his recovery and all, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So I expected that to happen, and although we still don't know for sure 100% positive, but all the reports seem to indicate another thing that I talked about this offseason. That was Eli Rogers' contract is indeed expected to toll. We'll know for sure later on this afternoon, come the start of the new league year, whether or not that happened there. All the other contracts outside of the Nelson and the Chicolo, I think, are reported in now. So if you want kind of a raw, I guess, place to kind of start with when it comes to where the Steelers at right now, real time, with cap space ahead of the start of the new league year, right around $13 million or so. But once again, that does not include the cap charges for Chicolo and Nelson. So obviously you're going to eat into that a little bit as well. But I not ideal, but we're still waiting to see what the Steelers are going to do with Morgan Burnett, and we still don't have the word on the Ben Roethlisberger extension and what, if any, money that's going to ultimately save there. So, is the bulk of the Steelers' free agent work done now? They're probably still going to, in fact, that's a good time to segue into the Steelers showing some early interest, at least in one free agent wide receiver. And one would think that they still have a chance to be on the hunt for a potentially lower level wide receiver, and particularly one that can play the X.
Right. To me, receiver's the next logical place for this team to address. We've said before that pairing a low-level free agent with a draft pick would be the best start to replacing Antonio Brown. Again, not that you can replace him completely, but that would be the plan. And I think it was, I believe, Jeremy Fowler that said the Steelers are looking into the receiver market. They inquired, that's the direct quote, about Tyrell Williams, the Chargers receiver. I think that's unlikely because he's going to command probably close to about $9 to $10 million per year, and so I can't see that happening with Pittsburgh. But you could see lower level guys. Now, the market's kind of taking some names off. We know that John Brown signed a good deal with Buffalo, and Perriman, I think, is going to Tampa after backing out of the Cleveland deal. But I still see names like Chris Conley and Kevin White and Aldrick Robinson. But that would be my next logical place of where this team's going to go, is to try to find that speedy X receiver.
We'll see.
Is there any other name you wanted to throw out there? I mean, people talk about Kevin White. I didn't, and I thought that was an interesting name because, again, pedigree guy, former 7th overall pick, should be very, very cheap, obviously, after flaying him out in Chicago, but still can be a big play threat.
Yeah, how has he been used so far?
He's been hurt. He's barely been used. He's got like 25 career catches, and most of that came his rookie year. So he'd be close to the minimum kind of guy.
Right. He would be a minimum, assuming, he would be a minimum guy. I mean, you're not going to sign him for much more than that. But, go down to Kevin Colbert checklist, do we know him? Will he take, draft pedigree, first three, was he drafted originally in the first 3 rounds, maybe even 4 rounds? Does he like cheap contracts? Go down the list, and it shouldn't be hard to come up with a few. I still like Conley. I think that's.
I do too.
I think that's ideal, really.
Yeah, I prefer Conley, but I could see he's going to be more expensive, so if you want to go cheaper, White. And also they have Kevin White's younger brother, Karan White, on the roster right now. Signed a futures deal this year. He's a local guy. They're WVU guys, Lackawanna, PA guys. I mean, they know the area. They can stay close to home. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying on paper it makes a lot of sense.
Anybody else you'd like to add to it?
They've been whittling away my list. I like Perriman, but I think he's gone. I like John Brown, but he got $9 million, $10 million, and that was too rich for me. I mean, hey, hats off to him. But Aldrick Robinson, if you want to go older, kind of a Lance Moore type deal. I mean, this guy catches touchdowns and makes big plays. And special team guys like Jeremy Davis, but those guys aren't going to help you at receiver at all.
All right. Do we think they're going to go after an inside linebacker at all?
That market's tough, man. I mean, Jordan Hicks was kind of the big fish, and after that, it's a lot of guppies. So, I mean, I like Darius Taylor from Tampa Bay. I mean, he's a guy most people aren't familiar with, but I liked his tape. And beyond that, I mean, I don't know what name you want to go to. Brandon Marshall, maybe, but he's close to 30, and I don't know if he's a 3-down guy. I think maybe you wait to the draft, but what do you think?
Well, I think the question today is, or in the next few days, is will they re-sign L.J. Fort?
Yeah, I sure hope so, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I could see Fort wanting to get out of Pittsburgh with the way they've kind of like just not used him the way that they should, and the lack of opportunity he got until finally this year, and even then it was pulling teeth to get him onto the field.
If they do go after an inside linebacker, it's obviously not going to be a. I mean, you would think probably what a $3-4 million season at most guy.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't find that name because that 3-4 million guy is
either.
probably a specialty player. He's not a 3-down guy. I mean, I've gotten a million questions about Darren Lee from the Jets, but I think you have to trade for him, and that's always the concern. To do that, is he going to solve your problems? I want a problem solver. I don't want a niche guy or we'll see he does this well, he doesn't do this well kind of guy. And also with the Jets losing out on Anthony Barr, I know he's going to play more of an edge role, but they may keep Darren Lee, so. They could do that, but I'm not interested in giving up draft picks for a guy that's going to be in the last year of his deal and hasn't been successful in the NFL level.
Here's the thing, and I forgot to look this up. Isn't Darren Lee a former first-round pick?
I don't know if he's first round. He's a pedigree guy. I think he's a third-round guy, I want to say. I'll look it up here. But top 3 rounds, for sure.
I can't remember if there's.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. First round guy, 20th overall.
All right, I thought so. So shouldn't there be a possible 5th-round option to pick up there?
I believe they declined it because I looked at his contract on Over the Cap the other day, and I didn't see the option year on there. Let me double check.
No, what I'm saying is I don't think they exercised it, but I think there's still time for you to exercise it.
Is there still time? Okay.
Right, because
yes.
the deadline I don't think is until like May something
Okay.
on the 5th-year option. So hypothetical, and I wouldn't trade. Maybe one of your 6. Would you give up a 6 for him?
Well, I want to.
Let me frame this better. Frame this better for you. He's in the final year of his rookie contract right now, which is relatively cheap. Okay, million
Yep.
or whatever it is. If you traded a 6 for him, then you can turn around and pick up his 5th-year option. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously, if he doesn't pan out for you, you would cut him this time next year before that 5th-year option guarantees. That's the only plus side of trading for. They're not going to cut him. I mean, are they really going to cut a former first-round draft pick with that cheap of salary right now, when he can provide you when you provide you depth? I think trading him if they are done with him is the most logical option. And you're right. You got a final year of the contract with him, so you got to be careful. Maybe you give at most a 5th-round draft pick for him. I don't know, but you better like his tape, okay? And then you also better be prepared to pick up that 5th-year option right after you trade for him as well too, by the deadline. So I can understand why some people are maybe throwing that name out there with him. He probably can play some special teams for you at the very least. And like I said, if you get him in there and you like what he has to show, then you keep him. Then you pay him that. You pay him that 5th-year option price next offseason. If you don't, you just cut him outright.
Yeah, I mean, you could pick up the option. That's fine because there's not much risk associated. But that's
other than injury, obviously.
Other than injury, but odds are he's probably not going to be worth it with the way his career has gone so far. So to steal the baseball term, I'd say it's a team control issue. Do you want to use that 6th-round pick for a guy you're probably going to have for just 1 year, or do you want to draft somebody on a 4-year contract and have that cheap team control who can give you similar? So that's kind of the logic there. I need to watch this guy more. I haven't really watched him because he's not a free agent, so he's not been on my radar. I know he picked off 3 passes last year, which on the surface is impressive. I don't know if they were quality or not, but is he going to solve the problems? Probably not. And if he's not, then I'm not terribly interested.
All right, safety.
Yeah, I mean, that safety market's been going crazy. And, there's some to get a top-level guy is probably not going to happen because you don't necessarily need a top-level guy. But I've always been a big fan of the dime guys. And Deion Buchanan signed with Tampa, which is fine by me. I was not interested in Buchanan, didn't like his tape, but I love Adrian Phillips from the Chargers. And there's some backup safety options as well. So is that possible? Yes, but we haven't heard any names connected.
I don't think you rush out right now and throw a ton of money at one of those safeties. I think you're going to see once these top names get peeled off the pile here, I think there are going to be some bargains to be had there.
Yeah, I'd probably wait for the cap space to tighten around the league and prices to go down. I wouldn't do it today.
All right, so wide receiver a possibility, maybe a safety.
Tight end, no Jesse. He's going to Detroit for good money. I mean, that opens up a number 2 need now, and that tight end market is hot.
It sure is, but still, would Max Williams absolutely look awful at a very low price right now?
No, wouldn't look bad. I still like Jeff Hireman. I know Uzuma signed for $6 million with Cincinnati, which surprised me, but I think that's the golden rate for starting tight ends right now.
Right. So, but I mean, Max would obviously command less than that.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, I know you got Xavier Grimble on a low $2 million tender. If you can maybe pick up another guy like Max Williams for $2 million per. But I have a feeling that a guy like Max Williams is not going to want to lock himself in on a very cheap 3-year deal right now at his age. So is this a guy that looks at the market and says, all right, give me one of them there minimum salary deals?
I don't think any player's ever said that in the world. But
I saw Kevin Colbert down there in Bradenton yesterday, and I think he offered their manager Clint Hurdle a minimum salary benefit contract. I think after working him out there, and I think Clint declined it.
Well, Clint's got 2 bad hips, so it's probably a right call. And just for the record, I know they were in Bradenton, and that might optically look bad because it's free agency, but it's 2019. We have internet, we have cell phones. It's fine. They're handling business, and clearly they did by signing Steven Nelson.
Yeah, I'm sure Omar's manning the fort, so to speak, there, and right. I'm sure Kevin can get text, and he's probably got 2 phones on him, and not one there. So, by the way, that group appears after going to visit the Pirates on what is today? Today's Wednesday. On Tuesday, they're supposedly were making their way towards Clemson, and the Clemson Pro Day I think is tomorrow being Thursday. So if they get in town today, there could be a couple of lunch or dinner dates going on with a prospect or 2 in Clemson.
Yeah, watch out for corner Trayvon Mullen. Now, obviously signing Steven Nelson, we talked about the corner dynamic there, but I thought that was one name that would fit as a potential round 2 guy, as a big, long corner that can bump and run.
All right, where are we now? We're plowing through this. We're on pace.
Yeah, let's see if we get derailed by this. Dave, you want to talk about AFC North contenders for years now? It's been Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati for a couple seasons, but man, it's going to be the Cleveland Browns right now, and rightfully so. They are making all the right moves this offseason. Trade for Odell Beckham Jr., trade for Olivier Vernon, signing every free agent. They're closing in on a 3-year deal with Earl Thomas. Hats off to John Dorsey because this team is turning around in a hurry.
They're going to try to make you get a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal that shows you a little bit something. It shows you right away when you're flush with cap space, you throw money at it now. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're out with Sasha's guys and in with Dorsey's guys. And, I mean, yeah, it definitely raises your eyebrow. I think they're going to win the trophy during the offseason here.
Yeah, and it's a good thing the Steelers got a corner because you don't want, Cody Sensabaugh or Artie Burns covering Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, and even Nelson's going to have a heck of a time. So, yeah, I mean, now there's still some questions about the offensive line for Cleveland, but I think they've solved a lot of the other issues, even that defensive line. I mean, they had Sheldon Richardson and they had Myles Garrett. It's a really good group, and we'll have to see how it comes together. We talked about the Eagles' dream team, however long ago that was, and it didn't work out. And sometimes when the pieces come together, and it's a new head coach, and you're trying to figure stuff out, there can be typical growing pains along the way. But talent-wise, I mean, that they've done just a tremendous job giving this roster the biggest facelift. Absolutely. And on the flip side, what do you think about what's happening right now in Baltimore? They talk about getting gutted. As good as a offseason it's been for Cleveland, it's been that bad of an offseason for Baltimore. I mean, they lose Weddles, Darius Smith, Suggs going to Arizona. Arizona of all places surprised me. C.J. Mosley. Then they rely on that defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust. Are you going to play wide receiver for them? Have they reached out to you any? They're just going to run every tight end in the world. They're just going to have just a cluster of tight ends, and they're not going to play a receiver. It's going to be like KC in 2014 when a receiver didn't catch a touchdown pass. Like, that's going to be Baltimore in 2019.
They cut Michael Crabtree a few weeks ago. John Brown's now left them via free agency. That leaves them, as far as experienced pass catchers, with just any wide receiver that caught balls that is under contract for 2019 is Chris Moore and who am I missing?
It's Willie Snead. What's Willie Snead doing?
Snead. How dare, because he's got the most.
Yeah.
So Snead and Chris Moore are their two wide receivers under contract for 2019 who caught balls for him last year. That is it. So are they going to be a guy that a team that maybe gets in the running for a Golden Tate here or a Williams, or I mean they can't go into the draft the way they are right now.
Yeah, you expect them to add, but you draft Hayden Hurst in the first round, you get Mark Andrews early, you sign Nick Boyle to a $6 million deal. Like, you got to play those guys too, so I think they're comfortable with being poor at receiver and just running a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets.
So what you're telling me is you'd rank the Browns ahead of the Ravens right now, right?
I mean, I don't have a ranking. Let's see how the offseason and the draft turns out. I don't care about rankings right now. I just know the Browns are going to be a heck of a team and not the same old Cleveland Browns.
Bengals odds-on favorite to finish last, I would think.
I think so.
I would think so as well, too. All right, that's your AFC recap, AFC North recap.
All right, Dave. I don't think I have anything else. Unless I missed it, please remind me if I do, outside of some reader emails. So, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think we're powering through this thing pretty good. So let's try to go to the email machine, the terrible podcast email machine here. From Artie. Let's see, Artie. Hi, kids. Lots of things play into losses. Looking at last year, you guys assign weight to where things went wrong. Something like this: 2018 losses, 30% interception, 30% fumbles, 20% missed kick, 10% poor defense, 5% clock management, 2% refs, 2% bad culture, 1% injuries. Well, injuries is definitely way down as a reason of why 2018 they had the losses that they did. The dropped interceptions, obviously. Really, you look at both sides of the ball. Ben's interceptions and the dropped interceptions on the back end. Mm-hmm. You combine those things together, especially I think Ben had like 5 red zone interceptions. Those things come back to haunt you. Fumbles. I mean, I know the first thing that's going to come to your mind is probably the Juju fumble and the Xavier Grimble fumble. So, and those were two games that they lost that they probably had a good chance to win. So, yeah, I agree with you there. The missed kicks, yeah, I mean, Boswell is just flat out awful. I mean, cost him a game, maybe 2. Poor defense, you'd probably rank that higher than 10%, though, wouldn't you, Alex?
Yeah, I just go back to what Art Rooney said about the turnover differential and the special teams play, and I thought those were, the 2 broadest issues for why. And when you go into turnover differential, you go into too many red zone turnovers and lack of playmaking, so it all kind of, is part of that subcategory. But those are the biggest issues for sure why they lost games. All
right, Artie, thanks for the question, Artie. From Brogan Rozanki from Iowa City, Iowa. Brogan, I appreciate the phonetic spelling there. You guys are awesome. Hi, Dave and Alex. My question to you is, say Le'Veon Bell reports by his November 13th deadline last season and plays the last 6 or 7 games. Does he get a larger contract this offseason? If you had to guess, where do those numbers come in per year? I also always like listening to your show, following your reports on Twitter. Great work. Thank you, Brogan. You take that one, Alex.
I really don't know. I mean, my first thought was yes, because I think some of the reports say that the teams and owners were really put off by Bell sitting out the entire year. And as you said, top of the show, it's really unprecedented to have that player sit out a year and to know how he's going to come back. And are you going to throw all your money at him and kind of take that risk? It's hard to say. But also, if he came back, he may have struggled a little bit out of the gate. We're not quite sure how he would have adjusted either, and that may have hurt his value even more. So I guess I would say it didn't make much of a difference. I'll hedge my bet.
All right. Let's see. A listener question from Michael Moore. Phonetic spelling. Michael Moore.
It's a tough one.
This is a running joke with us now. I love it. Dave and Alex, I don't want to sound like a bitter Steelers fan. And I'll even be transparent enough to admit that I'm a nervous Steelers fan, but I can't help but notice some irony in the Browns-Steelers offseason thus far, and I was hoping to get some of your thoughts about it. In the same offseason, the Steelers rid themselves of two players who thought they were bigger than the team and tore apart the locker room. The Cleveland Browns did the opposite. The Steelers have taken cents on the dollar for one of the biggest diva wide receivers in the league and let a guy who was willing to hold out for an extra season walk just to be quit on them. That makes sense. And the Browns have traded for perhaps the only wide receiver that may be a bigger diva than AB and are being rumored to be interested in signing another guy who threatened to hold out for the whole season and then flipped his teammates off as he was carted off the field. Is it too scatterbrained of me, upset with the return from losing two elite players, but happy that they're gone and yet nervous about the Browns' moves? I mean, I get where you're coming from, Michael. I mean, look, we've talked. I mean, it's going to be hard to replace Antonio Brown. It's going to be a little bit easier to replace, obviously, Le'Veon Bell there. We'll see. You get all those big names, big money earners in Cleveland, like Alex just said when we ran down the Browns' moves. Signing them and they look good on paper. How are they going to mesh together? That's the next big chore here. Because the way I know the way the Steelers do business, I'm not surprised the way anything's gone this offseason outside of and really not even the compensation with AB. I'm more surprised the way this whole thing has transpired with AB from a year ago, because a year ago he's signing that contract restructure and then bam, 1 year later he's out of town. So what's your thoughts on that, Alex?
Pretty much the same. I understand all the points you made, Michael, and I'm not directing this comment at you, just at the bigger picture, because I've heard it so much. But we all know why Odell got more compensation from AB. Like people say, how did Steelers only get a 3 and a 5, and Odell gets a first and a third and Peppers? Well, it's because of the contract, it's because of the attitude, the antics, and the lack of leverage. So that's proof right there of what leverage does for you. When you're a team with leverage like the Giants had, they could have kept Odell Beckham Jr. and get a lot for him. And when you don't, you get the AB deal.
All right, thank you for that question from Jeff. Hey, TP, terrible podcast. So what's the drop-off from Roby versus Nelson? Steelers obviously wanted Roby more, but why? Who are the best X-receivers in the draft? Let's save that part of the X-receivers of the draft for some draft talk after we get through free agency here, Jeff. Send me that question again about the X-receivers here in a couple weeks, and don't forget, we'll address that. Don't the Steelers have to draft one given that they don't have any more cap space for good free agents? Look, don't say they don't have cap space. They have cap space. You can get some of these lower-level wide receivers first-year cap space fit in all this stuff, and especially with this team cuts Morgan Burnett here pretty soon. What do you think it would take to swap Buffalo at 10? I think moving up to number 10 is a little bit rich, but you never know. I don't think they'd go up that high personally. So back to your original question, Alex. So what's the drop-off from Roby versus Steven Nelson?
I think just a less athletic player. I thought Roby was more agile. I thought he was twitchier. I thought change of direction was better. And I thought his long speed was a little bit better, too, and I thought he was probably a little bit better in the slot as well. But similar guy, feast-famine type guys that are competitive and with ball skills.
All right, from Andrew, Odell et al. Is the title of his email here. Dave, please help me understand something. Odell signed a 5-year contract last August for $95 million with $65 million guaranteed. Who pays the $65? Is it all on the Giants? Okay, look, here's what they're on the hook for. They're on the hook for the prorated portion of the signing bonus there that's outstanding. Okay, the rest of the guarantees. Non-bonus related, in other words, the salaries that were guaranteed amounts, those transfer over to the new team here. So that's, I saw reports out there from media, from media people on Odell Beckham Jr. say, how can they cut him with all those guarantees and all like that? It really. I mean, they're obviously going to have a high amount of dead money in there, but it's probably not as as big as what people are being led to believe right now. So remember, any time that you have amortized signing bonus money that's out there, that's the stuff that becomes subject to the dead money there. Any other guarantees, like I'm looking at his contract right now, 2020, $11.15 million of base salary becomes fully guaranteed on March 13th. So that's a deadline for that guarantee. Another March 2021, $12.79 million of base salary become fully guaranteed. Remember how we started this thing off talking about what's really guaranteed and what's not guaranteed. When you get into what you really would call it kind of an option bonus or a roster bonus at this time of year here, with these, that's when you hear the word kind of rolling guarantees, that's kind of what these March roster bonus and the guarantees that are tied to that as well too. So it's not like he got whatever the $60 million, whatever they listed that thing at as being fully guaranteed. So in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't as bad on the Giants as probably people are being led to believe. And obviously the Cleveland Browns have the cap space and the cash to be able to pick up what's left on it.
I agree. I'm going to defer to you. Good answer.
Let's see what else we have here. Well, I could talk about the cap all day. I love it. Contracts. I love that stuff. From Sim Football Critic. Hello, David and Alex. First of all, I'm a loyal and faithful fan of the podcast, and I reference you guys all the time on my podcast. Here's how I look at the Bell situation. He won and lost at the same time. The Steelers offered Bell $10 million fully guaranteed, would have made $33 million in the first 2 years, a 5-year, $7 million contract. In the case of deal, 4 years, $61 million with $35 guaranteed. The loss of his yearly average would have been Steelers' best. Would have been a Steeler at least 3 to 4 years. Would have made more money with the Steelers plus APY matches the Steelers' original offer for 2017. I think you really just recap what we said at the start of the show here with him. I guess the only argument against is the whole health factor and playing maybe not having the quote-unquote fully guarantees, but there in the deal that the Steelers offered, I'm willing to bet there was probably going to be a roster bonus due about this time on top of it, that he it would have taken something catastrophic for him not to see that. I would have been shocked, barring anything catastrophic, that Le'Veon Bell would have not seen the first 3 years of that deal, which was reported to be around whatever it was, $45 million or so. I mean, just the Steelers' history when it comes to these contracts, they just don't cut guys like that. I mean, he really would have had done a no-no or had a very, very serious injury. And like I said, even so, probably that second year salary to some degree that the Steelers offer him was going to be covered by an injury guarantee in that. So, was it worth him to take the year off to lose the $14 million? Well, he obviously is behind, or he should be. When we see these numbers, he should be behind on the cash flow at this point. So I guess it depends on however you want to frame the argument. But man, knowing the Steelers' history and everything that we've said, even way before this happened here, I think he should have signed the Steelers deal.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, that would have been the right move. But it was his decision, and respect whatever he wants to do.
From Stu Macpherson. Stu, it's S-T-U, and then he gives a phonetic spelling S-T-E-E-W. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Remember, I'm an idiot. I'm uneducated. Alex is the one with the college degree here. If the Steelers trade up in the first round, maybe to make sure they get someone like Bush, what is the likely cost to do so? What does a team have to give up to move up 3 spots or 5 spots? Question mark. Third rounder? Question mark. Probably a good starting point there.
Yeah, to move up, I think at least 5. It's going to cost you your third round pick. To go up higher than that, it's probably going to cost something else. So you have to look at the trade value chart and look at the whole situation. But call it a minimum third and then something else.
Let's see if we got anything else here worth getting into. Let's see. Caleb Winterburn, big fan. Didn't hear these questions answered yet. I think you may have missed my email, so here they go again. One draft question. Devin White and Devin Bush killed it at the combine. They really look like the real deal, possibly superstars even. So should the Steelers trade up to get one of them? If you were Colbert, would you trade up to nab one of them? It depends. It depends on the cost. You know, I mean, if he is your guy, let's say Devin White or Devin Bush is your guy, and you can't live without him, and he gets a couple of spots away from you, do it. Pull the trigger. Swap first and give him a third. You know, maybe you have to give up a second. How much in love with you are them? That's not a question Alex and I can answer. We'll see throughout this pre-draft process here. I have a feeling White's going to be a little bit harder to get. To move up to get. So I think maybe more of the question becomes, how in love with you are you with Devin Bush?
Yeah, I can't answer that, but if he's your guy, you try. But it's all about that cost.
And it all depends on how much you love the guy, So, look, we got plenty of time to talk about that. Travis Pick writes in, Alex, last year you wrote about Jordan Berry and efficient punting. His net yards were low, but with a shorter field most of the times, he was called on to pin other teams inside the 20. Did you guys do the same thing this year? And do you think he should be the Steeler? I wrote that, Travis. I did all the statistical background search on that. How dare you give Alex credit for my work? No, Travis. Look, I have not had a chance to do that. The funny thing is Jordan Berry is, unless something happens, scheduled to hit unrestricted free agency today. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people lined up to sign him. Will the Steelers bring him back on a minimum salary benefit contract? I think that's a possibility. Let him come to camp and compete for his job. Was he great last season? Absolutely not. I bet if I pulled the same kind of statistical data as I did last year, it would probably be a little bit worse. Because quite honestly, I thought that data that I pulled last year was better than what I thought it was, if that or better than what I expected there. Alex, thoughts? Thoughts on you authoring my work?
Yes, good job by me. Good job by you. No, can you upgrade? Sure, but I think the way that they used him as a directional punter more than a deep punt kind of guy hurts the numbers a little bit.
All right, I got time for one more from Matt Tressler, and I'm only taking it because it says contract structure in the title here. Dave, Alex, first time, long time. Following the AB and Bell contract situations, is there something to be said about the Steelers' way of doing contracts is outdated with the lack of guaranteed money? I get that they typically pay out the majority of their contracts that they sign, but as a player with one chance to cash in, you don't want to end up being the guy who lost out by trusting the team, even if you are the first. Personally, I would like to see them update the way that they do contracts to reflect the new realities of the NFL, i.e. more guaranteed money and future flexibility and less reliance on signing bonus, which can lead to dead money disasters. Please keep up the good work. And Matt, correct pronunciation is Matt. All right, Matt. Look, this is the argument. Andrew Brandt. I don't know if you follow him, ex-executive on Twitter at all. He thinks teams should be more cash and cap by year. In other words, forego a lot of these signing bonuses and build in guarantees that way in second years or whatnot. There's not many teams that do business the way the Steelers do business when it comes to contract and guarantees. Really, the Green Bay Packers and the Cincinnati Bengals are probably the only other two teams remotely close to the way the Steelers do business. What has happened this offseason, I don't think it's going to change that, Matt. Now, the big question becomes is whatever happens in this next CBA, will it force their hands? Are we going to get more guarantees, of some sort? I don't know. But as far as their business thinking with the way they like to do these contracts right now, either with their own players or outside free agents, I don't think it's going to change, at least not overnight, Matt.
A bit of breaking news to come in. Sorry to come off the contract question. Speaking of Jordan Berry, just re-signed to a 2-year deal. So there's your answer.
Well, there you go.
And I'm okay with that. I think he's a better. I'm not saying he's a great punter. I think he's better than people give him credit for. And the way that he's used hurts his numbers. It's not a punter-friendly style with the way they ask him to do it. And because the offense moves the ball, he doesn't get the open air punts that other guys get.
Just because I took that extra question, it allowed us to get the breaking news in there. We got you, Steelers. We got you.
Kevin Colbert thought he was safe.
We're on to you, Steelers. All right, great show. Really, Alex, I think that was that. I think that might have been one of our best shows ever there. So hopefully we have more of those along the line. Alex and I will be back on Friday, talk a little bit more about Steven Nelson, anything else that happens in free agency around the league. Yada, yada, yada. And with that, Alex has got to get busy writing up this Jordan Berry post. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to support the show, go to SteelersDepot.com and hit that donate button, upper right navigation bar. If you don't have money, if you like what we do, how about retweet some of the stuff on Steelers Depot on the Twitter machine? That'll help us out a ton. More than you even know, and we would appreciate that as well, too. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.